Have you ever felt like the ground beneath our feet, especially, in the world of work, is just constantly shifting? One day it's AI, the next it's some global economic tremor, then something about climate. It's a lot to keep up with, and it really begs the question, what does it all actually mean for our jobs, for the skills we need? Well, today we're taking a deep dive into exactly that. We're going to unpack the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs Report 2025. Our mission here is, well, to spill what over 1,000 global employers, and these represent a staggering 14 million workers across 22 industries, 55 economies, what they are anticipating for jobs and skills between, say, 2025 and 2030. And what makes this deep dive so powerful, I think, is that it's built on this massive, unique data set. It's enriched by insights from major data partners like ADP, Coursera, Indeed, LinkedIn, some really big names. So we're going to reveal some genuinely surprising insights. We'll explore how jobs are actually being created and displaced in ways that might defy your expectations. We'll look at the often misunderstood role AI is playing. Spoiler, it's maybe not what you think. And crucially, what skills are becoming absolutely paramount for everyone. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with those foundational forces, the drivers of change. The report points to 5 big overarching macro trends that are fundamentally reshaping the global workforce. We're talking technological change, economic uncertainty, the green transition, demographic shifts, and this thing called geoeconomic fragmentation.
Right. And it's fascinating how these trends don't really operate in isolation, do they? They sort of intertwine and amplify each other. Take technological change, for instance. AI often grabs the headlines, but the report actually finds that broadening digital access is seen as the most transformative trend overall. That's 60% of employers expecting it to reshape their business by 2030.
60%.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you're right to mention AI. AI and information processing technologies, those are predicted to have the single biggest impact. We're talking 86% of respondents anticipating they'll transform their business in the next 5 years.
86%. Wow.
And you can see that impact in the investment, right? The money flowing into AI has surged like nearly 8-fold since ChatGPT burst onto the scene back in late 2022. It's huge. And this really prompts us to rethink AI's role. Is it just going to replace jobs wholesale? The report makes a really compelling case, I think, for AI augmenting human skills. There was this analysis by Indeed and GPT-4o. Yeah, they looked at over 2,800 skills and found that basically 0 skills show very high capacity for total replacement by current Gen AI tools.
0.
0. Okay, that's significant.
It is. In fact, 69% have very low or low replacement capacity. So skills needing physical execution or, nuanced judgment, hands-on application, think empathy, active listening, manual dexterity, they show almost no substitution potential right now. Where Gen AI really excels is in sort of theoretical knowledge and digital manipulation, things like data mining, machine learning applications, even reading, writing, mathematics.
Makes sense.
And beyond AI, let's not forget robotics and autonomous systems. They're expected to transform 58% of businesses. And just to give you a sense of scale, global robot density, it's doubled in just 7 years.
Doubled.
To 162 units per 10,000 employees.
Wow, that's reshaping whole industries.
Exactly. Manufacturing, logistics, it's fundamental. That distinction about augmentation versus replacement, that's really important. It definitely challenges a lot of the doom and gloom narratives we hear.
Yeah.
So beyond tech, economic uncertainty is another massive force. What are employers seeing on that front? What's the feeling there?
Well, the rising cost of living is actually the second most transformative trend overall. That's impacting 50% of employers, half of them.
Half, right?
And a general economic slowdown. That's expected to transform 42% of businesses. What's kind of intriguing, though, is the regional variation.
How so?
Well, for example, inflation is a top concern in sub-Saharan Africa, whereas slower economic growth feels more pressing in, say, Eastern and Southeastern Asia. It just shows how these big pressures land differently depending on where you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears then to the green transition. The report notes climate change mitigation, that's 47%, and adaptation, 41%, are significant drivers. What does that translate to in terms of jobs and skills?
Well, if you zoom out, these environmental trends are clearly fueling demand for completely new roles and skills. Like renewable energy engineers, environmental engineers, they're among the fastest growing jobs.
Okay.
And what's even more telling, I think, is that environmental stewardship has actually entered the report's list of top 10 fastest growing skills for the first time ever.
First time. Interesting.
Yeah, and this isn't just, theory. LinkedIn data actually backs it up. It shows green hiring has consistently outperformed overall hiring since way back in May 2022. It's a real, tangible shift happening in the labor market.
That is a powerful signal. Okay, next up. Demographic shifts. This one seems like a double-edged sword. You've got aging and declining working age populations, especially in higher income economies, that's transforming 40% of businesses. But at the same time, you have expanding working age populations in lower income economies, transforming 25% of businesses.
Exactly. And to put some numbers on that, by 2050, lower-income countries are projected to hold something like 59% of the entire global working age population, almost 60%,
Wow.
which, begs a crucial question. Over the next decade, you'll have 1.2 billion young people in emerging economies becoming working-age adults.
Hmm.
1.2 billion, but
Yeah.
only about 420 million additional jobs are expected to be created globally.
Oh, that's quite a gap.
It highlights a huge pressing challenge: job creation, economic integration on a massive global scale.
Yeah, definitely something to watch. And finally, let's tackle geoeconomic fragmentation. This is basically the increasing tension, the sort of decoupling of global economies, right? Often driven by politics and conflict. The report notes a significant impact here, too. 34% of employers expect these geopolitical tensions and conflicts to drive changes in their business models.
And the impact is pretty tangible. You see increased restrictions on trade and investment that's cited by 23% of employers. And those businesses expecting these trends to transform their operations. They're 50% more likely to reshore
And
operations.
so bringing things back home.
Exactly. Pulling supply chains closer. This fragmentation, it's driving demand for security roles, obviously like cybersecurity,
Hmm.
but also, interestingly, for those very human-centered skills: resilience, leadership, things you need to navigate a more uncertain world.
Okay, so we've laid out these powerful macro forces. When we bring it down to the ground level, what does all this mean for the jobs themselves? Are we looking at a complete overhaul or?
Well, the overall outlook is actually for net growth, about 7% by 2030, which amounts to roughly 78 million jobs globally.
Okay, 78 million net growth. That sounds positive.
It does, but, and this is a big but, it comes with significant structural churn. You have to imagine like a giant revolving door. The report estimates 170 million new jobs will be created,
Okay.
while 92 million existing jobs are displaced. So it's a massive rebalancing act, not just simple growth. A lot of movement.
Right, huge churn.
Right.
So who are the winners and losers in this? What are the fastest growing jobs in like percentage terms?
On the growth side, yeah, it's largely tech-related roles, as you'd probably guess. Big data specialists, fintech engineers, AI, and machine learning specialists, they're booming. But we're also seeing really strong percentage growth in those green and energy transition roles we talked about. Autonomous and electric vehicle specialists, renewable energy engineers, those cutting-edge, high-growth areas.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and this might surprise some people listening. When we look at the largest job growth in absolute numbers, like sheer volume, the top role is farm workers.
Yep, farm worker.
They're projected to see 35 million more jobs by 2030. That's just a massive number. What's really driving that? It can't just be the green transition, can it?
No, it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
Yes, the green transition plays a part that push towards sustainable agriculture, but also broadening digital access in agriculture. That means new tech adoption, which might need different labor.
Mm.
And the rising cost of living likely means more localized food production, which increases the need for hands-on labor too.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense.
And other major growing roles, in absolute terms, that might not be considered tech jobs are things like delivery drivers, construction workers, salespersons, food processing workers, basic essential roles. And critically, we see significant growth expected in the care economy: nursing professionals, personal care aides, and also education roles like teachers. That's largely driven by those demographic shifts, the aging populations needing care, and maybe younger populations needing education.
That's such a powerful contrast, isn't it, between the high-tech, high-percentage growth and then the sheer volume of growth in these more traditional, essential roles. So what about the other side of that coin, the fastest declining jobs?
Well, the jobs seeing the sharpest decline are mostly clerical and secretarial roles. That makes sense given automation.
Right. Yeah.
Cashiers, ticket clerks, administrative assistants, data entry clerks. But what's particularly striking this time around, and this is a major shift from previous reports, is that graphic designers and legal secretaries are now also among the fastest declining roles.
Oh, wow. Graphic designers and legal secretaries.
Yeah. It really underscores how Gen AI is increasing its capacity for more complex knowledge work, moving beyond just simple data entry or routine tasks.
So it sounds like those declining roles are really at the sharp end of that technological disruption then.
Exactly. The decline in these specific roles is primarily driven by that broadening digital access, by AI, and by robotics. They are, unfortunately, the roles most susceptible to automation right now, especially those involving repetitive or predictable tasks.
Okay. So let's pivot then. Let's turn our attention to the shifting skills paradigm. The report projects that 39% of workers' existing skill sets will be transformed or become outdated by 2030. 39%. Now, that's a significant number, obviously, but it's actually a slowdown from earlier predictions. It was 44% in 2023 and way up at 57% back in 2020. So the pace of skills obsolescence seems to be decelerating a bit.
That's a really critical point, yeah. And a potential reason for this stabilization could be a growing focus on continuous learning. The report indicates that 50% of the workforce has now completed training. That's up from 41% in 2023.
Okay, so more training happening.
It suggests organizations are starting to get, more serious about upskilling their people, maybe catching up a bit.
So if existing skills are shifting, what skills are actually on the rise? What should people be focusing on?
Well, unsurprisingly, the fastest growing skills are heavily weighted towards technology. AI and big data, networks and cybersecurity, technological literacy in general.
Right.
But, and this is really important, it's not just tech. Crucially, those human-centric skills, they're also soaring in importance. Creative thinking, resilience, flexibility and agility, curiosity, and lifelong learning.
The softer skills, sometimes called.
Exactly, though I
Yeah.
just like that term sometimes because they're actually quite hard to master. And, as we mentioned, environmental stewardship, making it into the top 10 fastest growing for the first time. It really speaks to this, holistic set of capabilities that are now in demand. Tech plus human skills.
Okay. Conversely, what skills are declining in importance?
We're seeing a decline in things like reading, writing, and mathematics, maybe in their most basic forms, perhaps handled by tech now. And also manual dexterity, endurance, and precision. That clearly reflects the impact of automation in certain areas.
Makes sense.
However, and this is really important to emphasize, while general manual skills might be declining in overall importance, those growing roles that do require manual skills often demand a higher degree of specialization. It's often about combining those manual abilities with technological literacy, with problem solving. So it's not that manual skills are disappearing, they're just evolving, becoming more specialized.
Got it. Now, the report highlights a big hurdle for businesses trying to adapt, right? Skill gaps. 63% of employers identified this as the biggest barrier to their business transformation. That's huge.
It is huge. And this brings us to what the report calls the importance gap and the proficiency gap between growing jobs and declining jobs. And what really stands out as the most significant differentiator in terms of both importance and proficiency. It's resilience, flexibility, and agility.
Ah, those human skills again.
Exactly. And again, this loops right back to our earlier point about AI. Gen AI is far more likely to augment human skills rather than just fully replace them, especially skills requiring nuanced understanding or human interaction. And those are precisely the areas where skills like resilience, flexibility, creativity, where they really shine.
Okay, so given these really profound shifts, these challenges, how are employers actually responding? What are their top workforce strategies looking like?
Well, the number one strategy by a huge margin is upskilling the current workforce. A massive 85% of surveyed employers are planning this approach. 85%.
Wow, okay, so they recognize the need.
They do. But
Mhm.
there's a kind of sobering reality check here about the actual training needs versus delivery. The report estimates that for a representative sample of 100 workers, 59 will need training by 2030. But critically, 11 of those 59 are unlikely to actually receive the necessary upskilling.
11 out of 59, so almost 20% might miss out.
Yeah, that's a significant gap in itself, isn't it? In terms of funding, most employers, 86%, they predominantly fund their own training programs. Although government funding does play a pretty significant role in some sectors like accommodation, food and leisure, and education and training.
Okay. And what about that balance between automation versus augmentation? Are companies leaning more towards replacing people or empowering them with tech?
It looks like it's a mix, really.
I-
73% of employers plan to accelerate process and task automation. So automation is definitely happening.
Right.
But 63% also intend to complement and augment their workforce with new technologies. So a majority are also looking at augmentation. And here's a fascinating regional outlier. Austria.
Austria.
Yeah, in Austria, 42% of all human work tasks are projected to be augmented by technology by 2030. 42%. That's significantly above the global average, which is around 33%.
That's interesting. So some regions are really leaning into the augmentation side.
It really highlights how aggressively some regions are embracing technology to enhance, not just replace, their workforce.
So what other workforce adjustments are employers making besides training and tech?
Well, beyond upskilling, 70% plan to hire new staff who already have those emerging skills. Makes sense.
Sure, hire the skills in.
Exactly. And 51% aim to transition existing staff from declining roles into growing roles. That's that internal mobility piece.
Yeah.
But also, 41% foresee staff reductions due to skill obsolescence. So layoffs are still part of the picture for some.
Right.
And interestingly, going back to that geoeconomic fragmentation point, 10% plan to reshore operations, bringing jobs back home. That's slightly more than the 8% who are planning to offshore.
Okay, that reinforces that trend. Yeah. What about wages? Are companies planning to pay more to attract and keep the talent they need through all this change?
It seems so. Over half of employers, 52%, anticipate allocating a greater share of their revenue to wages.
Okay.
Well, the primary drivers seem to be, firstly, aligning wages with productivity and performance. 77% cite that. And secondly, simply competing for talent. 71% say that's a key reason. There's a clear recognition, it seems, that investing in people, including paying them competitively, pays off. And there's some fascinating insight on this from ADP research, actually. In the U.S., they found the median wage is 37% higher for each increasing job zone level.
Job zone level, what's that exactly?
Think of it like a ladder of complexity and expertise. Each step up, from entry-level to highly specialized roles, commands a significant wage premium, on average 37% per step.
Got it. Higher skills, higher pay.
Pretty much. But, and this is important, this ADP data also points to a really clear gender disparity.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Men, on average, experience a 44% wage premium between these job zones, whereas women, they see only a 30% premium on average.
44 versus 30? That's quite a difference.
It really highlights a persistent challenge around equitable compensation, even when accounting for skill level or job complexity. Still work to do there.
Definitely. Okay, finally, let's look quickly at how hiring practices themselves are evolving. Is the university degree still the golden ticket it once was?
Well, work experience, that remains paramount. 81% of employers prioritize it, but the requirement of a university degree specifically is actually declining. Only 43% of employers still strictly require it.
Less than half now.
Yeah. And what's gaining prominence instead are things like skills assessments. 48% are using those, and psychometric tests at 34%. It really signals a clear and, I think, welcome shift towards skills-based hiring, focusing more on what you can do rather than just where you went to school or what degree you have on paper.
That seems like a positive trend.
I think so.
Yeah.
And if we look specifically at AI-driven workforce strategies, just to loop back to that, 77% of employers plan to reskill and upskill their existing workforce, specifically to work alongside AI better. Meanwhile, 69% plan to actively recruit talent skilled in actually designing and building AI tools. But again, it's not all positive reinforcement. 41% also anticipate reducing their workforce as AI capabilities expand enough to replicate certain roles. So while augmentation is a very strong trend, some displacement due to AI is still expected.
Right. The churn continues. So, okay, to try and summarize this incredibly detailed deep dive, the Future of Jobs Report 2025 paints, well, a really complex mixed picture, doesn't it? It highlights significant structural churn, yes, but ultimately points to a net positive global employment outlook overall. And, maybe surprisingly, a decelerating rate of skills obsolescence, partly thanks, it seems, to increased training efforts.
That's a good summary, yeah. What's absolutely clear is that despite these more positive overall trends, skill gaps, they remain a predominant barrier. A major headache for transformation across most industries, most economies. However, the good news is that employers seem increasingly proactive. They're moving beyond just observing these shifts to trying to actively shape their workforces in response. And ultimately, the decisions being made today by leaders in business, in policy, in education, those decisions will determine the outcomes of these profound shifts for millions and millions of workers around the world.
The report really does highlight this continuous tension, doesn't it? Between, on the one hand, deeper automation, and on the other, broader human technology augmentation. It's not really an either, it's more of a spectrum, a balance. Which leads to a thought for you, the listener. What path will you contribute to shaping? In your own career, perhaps, or in your organization? Where do you see yourself or want to be on that spectrum?
Yeah, it's definitely worth considering how these insights apply directly to your own professional development, your team,